I swear this is the last time I'm bringing up this topic because I do want to do more regular talking videos, but I got to get this off my chest. So, Steam the Madman finally did it. Adult games are now being sold on Steam, and surprisingly enough, I have some concerns. What's up everyone, hope you're all safe with the big ass tornado outside, but today's a brand new world, a world where Battlefield is floundering, Samurai Showdown is coming back, and Steam is allowing adult games on the platform. Starting with what I think is called Neglegi by Darker Studios. I don't really know anything about this title, but it seems rather innocuous. It isn't really pushing any boundaries. And you know what, I think that is a blessing in disguise for Steam, because most of the news coming out of this announcement have been rather positive, even from more, let's just say, inflammatory mainstream outlets. Now compare that to when Steam first made this change in its policy public, and please believe if this title was something more extreme, we would have probably just seen the Rev 2 edition of the first argument. Speaking of which, quick plug, I have started to bring back some of my older Eroge reviews to the channel, with a few tamer edits. So if you want to see some examples of mature games that have actual, video game stuff in them, I'll leave links in the description below. But this video is going to be more focusing on my concerns with the changes in regards to Steam, other platforms, and the games themselves. Not going all turncoat or anything, please believe I'm all about game devs letting it all hang out. But with any massive change, and from what people have been telling me, this is a game changer, the devil is in the details. So let's begin. Okay, I really hope Steam has put in ample thought about all this change before committing to it, but after all the mess with multiple game devs stalled for God knows how long, while this is all being implemented, it does feel a bit rushed, though it doesn't mean it is. With that said, I do wonder how Steam is going to react to a potential flooding of adult games onto the Steam platform. I mean, to devs this probably looks like a gold rush, and I wouldn't be surprised if every dev from the smallest indie VN to the biggest Japanese eroge company would want in. And ignoring the issues of quantity over quality that I'll get in later, this could probably wreak havoc on Steam's algorithms, making it even harder to see good titles. Or at least it might have if Steam had not set it up so that the algorithms that show new games on the front page do not show eroge unless you have tweaked your Steam preferences to allow adult titles to be visible. And while I have no confirmation on this, I have also heard that even if you do consent to seeing adult titles, they are still somewhat suppressed compared to standard games. So that shows that Steam might still be meddling with the back end to decide what games to show and what not to, which leads me to my next concern about Steam, which is the potential for them to backpedal depending on how things progress going forward. Now I do not think they will do a full backpedal and disallow adult games from Steam. No, can't put that genie back in the bottle. But they could always tighten up on the types of content allowed in these games, a good example being Melty's Quest by Rimtyree. It's actually a pretty good game, and amusingly enough, when looking for examples in the Steam preferences, this game was the first to show up on the list. But when you look at the mature content description, this game probably breaks some laws somewhere that Steam operates, so buyer beware. Steam could always pull a random country's name out of a hat and deem the game they do not like as illegal and remove it. Not saying this is likely, but it could happen. Moving on to something that Steam has not shown any light to, how does this affect the other aspects of the storefront? Steam has, well, I wouldn't call it a robust modding platform, but it's half decent in the form of the Steam Workshop. And obviously some nudity or other NSFW aspects have crept up onto the service, but at last check they are not actually allowed to be there. Does this change with the new openness to adult games? And what about Steam's new streaming service? Is Steam going to be selling games that they themselves will not allow to be streamed on the service that they own? I mean, maybe this change does extend to Steam's other areas, but even ignoring the streaming service in development, there doesn't seem to be any infrastructure to separate the content when it comes to modding, like something along the lines of how the modding Nexus does. There are a lot of unanswered questions in my mind, but maybe this will be clarified in the upcoming months as everything settles down, or maybe Steam will go all don't ask don't tell in regards to this. But I don't think that's the best plan of action for a company to make. So where does this leave the other eroge sites like Manga Gamer and Jast in regards to what Steam has done? Obviously I can't say for sure what goes on in the heads of these companies, but it did feel like the other storefronts didn't really feel that Steam was a form of competition to them. I mean, obviously tangentially they were, as you could sell the safe work version on Steam and the unedited version on another platform, but mainly you would just buy the title outright from them. Now, Steam is an official competitor to their type of content, and I hope they have plans for stepping up their game. Keep in mind that these two companies I mentioned also double as publishers, so they still can get a cut even if a game is sold on Steam, but Valve takes like 30% off the top compared to almost all the profits sticking with your own site. So as far as stepping up their game goes, I really hope they try to capitalize on the few things they do better than Steam, because there are some clear advantages. Being DRM free is one of those, as while Steam's DRM is not all that bad, I mean you can still play your games offline, which sounds like an obvious thing but for some reason isn't. But DRM is still DRM. With these DRM free storefronts, you own what you buy 100% full stop. The other thing to capitalize on is the categorization. With Steam, their tagging system is good, but it's made for regular video games with tags like racing, action, anime, FPS. The most explicit tagging going on in Steam is simply, does it have nudity and does it have sexual content? With a platform that is made specifically for a type of content, you can have a much more in-depth categorization. Just take the VNDB for example, a site that was made for visual novels of all types, and you can sort through it with a fine-tooth comb to figure out what you like. Want a certain type of protagonist? There's a tag for that. Want a particular type of gameplay beyond simple action RPG? There's a tag for that. Want an NSFW title with a particular form of fetish content? There's a tag for that. These other sites can do that, and DLSite actually does, while Steam can't. And to be fair, Manga Gamer is on the right path, but they just need a whole website upgrade. I mean, it looks fine, but it also looks like it was made in the early 2000s. Okay, if I haven't lost you already, this is probably where I'm going to annoy some people. Can we talk about the quality of some of these games getting cheered on here? Now let's be clear, Steam already has a long tried history with garbage games getting onto the service. But no offense, but do we want to make that worse? I will probably in the future do an entire video on how I feel about the quality of adult games, because I have learned after talking to some people that my views on the genre are a bit more unique than I first thought. But TLDR, in my mind, 85% of this stuff is crap, 10% is okay, and only 5% is actually good. The best example of this has to do with the somewhat new Treasure Hunter Clary, which so many people were praising and saying that I should do a video on, but I swear to God, I played it and I hated it all the way through. Sure, it looked pretty, but the game itself was hot garbage. Functional hot garbage, but hot garbage nonetheless. So quality wise, I'm seeing this is going to be filling up the Steam page with a lot of zeros, a handful of 5s, and a sliver of 10s. Then we need to talk about machine translated games. Now this concept might be new to anyone outside the visual novel scene, but simply put, take any game you love, find a good scene or quote, chuck that bad boy into Google Translate, swap it to Japanese and back to English, and then read it back. Damn near incomprehensible, right? Well, picture an entire game that reads like that, and you have the machine translated experience. If you have ever, without knowing the Japanese language, played a Japanese VN that has not been localized or fan translated, you have probably dealt with programs that machine translate the game in order to somewhat understand what's going on. But it is unacceptable to have an actual localization that people pay for use such methods. My worry is that with Steam's lack of any level of quality control, this will increase the amount of machine translated VNs out in the world, whereas with most other VN sellers, they would probably turn them away until they got a proper translation, or maybe even help them translate the game. Now, to be honest, this last part was going to be talking about stolen assets in some of these H games, but upon further thought, unlike the other two topics I talked about, where it was more, bad game syndrome and lazy translation syndrome, stolen assets are actually against Steam's TOS and simply need to be reported, so it's not fair to me to point out this as a concern for the new system when the core issue, stolen content, is actually fairly common in regards to Steam games, sadly. Okay, I've said my concerns, but before I go, you guys know I don't like to end videos on a downer, so what are the non-obvious positives I see here? Well, first of all, while everyone's going on about adult games getting on Steam, I'm just happy one less area of creative expression is being penalized on the Steam platform. Just because you have an H scene does not mean you intend to create H games. Just take the original Fate Stay Night. Before, if Type Moon ever wanted to localize the game, they would only be able to do so with the edited version made for consoles. Granted, that one has some amazing extra content, but the point stands. With this change, people can get the original experience made all the way back in 2004, while other creators don't get stonewalled while looking at Mass Effect Andromeda's softcore porn in confusion. The other big gain, and this is kind of a stretch, but if all of this pans out and Steam does not get hit with any unforeseen repercussions for their decision, this could possibly prove to other large companies that you can indeed cater to a more mature crowd without jeopardizing the more traditional revenue sources. It sounds crazy, but keep in mind just a few years ago the thought of Steam doing this was equally ludicrous. I mean, just think about it. YouTube could introduce some new video types, and Twitch could stop lying about the IRL section. Jokes aside, either way I can see some very high highs and some very low lows in the upcoming weeks or months. And at the very least, at the beginning parts of this so-called gold rush, it looks awfully close to a coal mine to me, and I just want everyone involved, consumers and developers, to be carefully watching their canaries, if you know what I mean. So tread lightly if not optimistically, and I'm gonna go back to working on some regular videos. If you liked what you heard here, maybe check out some of my other videos, and if you like what I'm doing, maybe support me on Patreon. But with that said, I'm out. Peace!